Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my movie vlog. My name is John Campea, and this is my end of the year top 5 most pleasant and biggest surprise movies of 2017. Now, much like my 10 most disappointing films of 2017, this list isn't necessarily the best films of 2017, but simply the films that surprised me the most. The films that I took where my expectations were for the films, and then how good they actually ended up being. The 5 films that had the biggest gap between those are my 5 biggest surprise, most pleasant surprise movies of 2017. Now look, all film is subjective, which means my list is probably going to look a whole lot different than your list. I just hope that my list gives you some food for thought and gives you some movies that maybe you didn't check out this year because they didn't look all that good, and maybe you'll give them a try now. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started. And my number 5 biggest surprise movie of this year was one I said for a long time I thought was going to be just horrible, and that's Power Rangers. Now, I'm not saying this movie was great. I'm not saying it's going to be a movie we talk about for a long time to come, but considering that I really thought this was just going to be a horrible movie, and I walked out of it smiling and said, you know what? There was some fun in that movie. There was entertainment value in that movie. I don't know if you can turn this to a franchise, but I legitimately had a good time watching it, which is so far removed from my earlier thought that I just thought I was going to hate the damn thing. I ended up enjoying it quite a bit. Again, it's not going to be in my top 20 films of the year list, but it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be, so it gets the number 5 spot on my list. All right, number 4 biggest surprise movie to me this year is Get Out. Get Out is just a fantastic little horror film, but my expectations for it were fairly low. First of all, even though I'm a big fan of Jordan Peele, this was his first directorial effort, so you don't want to go into that with high expectations. It seemed just like another little low-budget horror film, and those are like a dime a dozen, and a lot of times those ones don't ever work out. Sometimes they do, a lot of times they don't, so I didn't have a lot of expectations, and this is going to end up on a lot of people's top 10 best films of the year list. Probably not me. It's not going to end up on my top 10, but it's certainly a really good movie that you'll have a really good time with. It kind of takes the genre and bends and twists it a little bit and gives you a new experience you hadn't had before. And you can't often say that about horror movies. So for that reason, it had a big gap between where my expectations were and how good it ended up being. So it's the number 4 movie on my list. All right, we move on now to number 3. And the number 3 is probably going to be in my top 10 films of the year list. But that's The Big Sick. Well, John, why did you have lower expectations for it? Well, I'll tell you why. It seemed like a throwaway, low-budget comedy that we see a lot of these types of movies get made. And I'll be honest with you, too. Full disclosure here. We were even offered the opportunity before this movie came out at the last place I worked to have the cast come in and talk about the movie, and we took a pass. Because honestly, to us, it just looked like another little throwaway comedy that no one's going to be talking about in 3 weeks. Then I saw the movie, and it totally blew my socks off. Now, I didn't have terrible expectations for it because I liked the people involved with it. The trailer looked kind of humorous and fun, but again, I just didn't think it would be all that memorable, and it's probably going to end up in my top 10 films of the year list. It's wonderful. If you have not seen The Big Sick, I don't know what you're waiting for. It's got heart, it's got real emotion, but it's also hilarious. Holly Hunter is probably going to get a Best Supporting Actress nomination for this movie, so go on out and check out The Big Sick. My number 3 best surprise movie of the year. All right, now we move into the top 2, and my number 2 favorite biggest surprise movie of the year ends up being Happy Death Day. My expectations, once again, were so low, mostly because in the past year or so, I've seen a number of low-budget horror films with fairly straightforward, simple premises that turned out being garbage. And this is a pretty straightforward premise. It's basically a horror version of Groundhog Day. But this movie is so clever. It's got some really good wit to it, some very good scares to it, and it's just a smart little horror film that ends up being really entertaining. And they even play off that Groundhog Day similarity a little bit in the movie. They wink their eye to it a bit. Once you see the movie, you'll know what scene I'm talking about. But it's totally worth it. I had a great time again. Totally garbage expectations for it. Super enjoyed this film. Not going to be in my top 10 of the year, but a massive gap between my expectation and where it actually ended up being. So check out Happy Death Day if you have not yet. Which leads us into my number 1 biggest pleasant surprise movie of the year. And that, without question, goes to Girls Trip. Much like The Big Sick, that kind of looked like a throwaway little, attempted comedy with heart. This also looked like a totally throwaway, cheap little comedy that was probably going to have no legs, no real laughs, no real humor, no likable characters. And you know what? I haven't made my finalized list of top 10 favorite films of the year list, but man, if Girls Trip doesn't get on it, it's going to come close. It is by far the funniest movie I've probably seen in the last 2 or 3 years. It's absolutely ripping hilarious. Talked about Holly Hunter in The Big Sick possibly getting a Best Supporting Actress nomination. There are a few legitimate award bodies that are whispering that Tiffany Haddish may also have an outside chance at getting a Best Supporting Actress nomination because she just steals this movie. She's so funny, thoroughly entertaining. It's absolutely outrageous. You start laughing from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, and it just ends up being such a different experience than what I was expecting walking into it. Girls Trip is my #1 most pleasant surprise movie of the year. Again, I'm not saying these films are necessarily the best films of the year, just that all these films are so different from my expectations to how good they actually ended up being. So just to run them down again, my #5 most pleasant surprise movie of the year was Power Rangers. #4 is Get Out with first-time director Jordan Peele. #3, The Big Sick, one of my favorite films of the year. #2, Happy Death Day, the little horror film that surprised us all. And my #1 most pleasant surprise movie of the year is the comedy Girls Trip. So here's what I need you guys to do. Jump down to the comments section. Let me know what were some of the biggest surprise movies for you this year. Remember, not best movies. Movies that you didn't have any expectations for and they totally ended up blowing your expectations away. Jump down to the comments section and let me know your thoughts. Listen, guys, while you're here, why don't you take a second, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel, click the thumbs up button, make sure you follow me on social media, simply at John Campea. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for joining me for this video, and until the next one, bye-bye.